everyone. We're going to trace today an interesting problem. We're looking at this piece of code, and this is problem 2 that is given to you. And I want to be able to make sure I can know and show exactly the output of this code on the screen. As if I were to compile it and execute it, what would I get on that screen? Show that exactly. So that's a very important technique to learn. It helps with debugging. It helps with understanding what the code function, what it does. And it's very tricky sometimes because we have to make sure we understand how to use the call stack, the function call stack, and understand the difference between the local and the public or the global scope. So one twist to this question, if I look at this question, just like any tracing question, you want to examine the code very closely. So in line 1, there's the include. Line 2, I see the declaration of A outside any function, so that must be a global variable. Then I see 3 function prototypes, an F, a G, and an H. What's interesting is that the H function really takes a parameter with an asterisk, so it's an int star data type, and that is a pointer variable. And also, it returns an int star, which means it also returns a pointer variable. So I take it there's a call by reference there. So then we look at the function bodies. Just quickly look at the structure of the code before we trace it, just to understand and make sure that it makes sense. So there's a function f, and from what I can tell, it's going to call g. There's a print, there's a return. Then there's a function g. It does a print. It calls h. It passes the address of b. It returns. Then on line 20, there's the function h, which basically prints on line 22. And then it does something to the pointer. It uses a dereferencing operator. And then it returns. And then there's main. And there's where the main code will work. And main will basically be declaring something, printing a few things, and then returning a 0. OK, that code looks fine. I don't see any major issues from what I can tell by coarsely looking at this code. It seems reasonable. It seems like it's going to work. So without really going through every detail, I wouldn't be able to tell what it's going to do. But at least I got the general structure right. So I don't think there will be any warnings or any problems in compiling this code. So I'm going to go ahead and start tracing it. So where do I start? Looking from the very beginning, on line 2, I see there's a global variables. Global variables always sit on the call stack first. So there's A, and A is a global variable, and its value is 2. So what I do, I always try to keep a little box, little storage space to maintain the value of every variable. This is the data in my program. You have to maintain these values over time. That's what you got to keep track of. And also, you got to keep track of the scope. So for example, the next line of execution is going to be in main. So now I jump to line 26, specifically line 28, where that's in my first executable line. OK, so I've got main. So I'm in a function called main. And in this function, there's a declaration of an int star. That's a data type. A lot of people get confused about this. They think the star is part of P. Well, it's not. You see, the way you declare variables is data type variable name. So the data type is int star, and the variable name is P. So when you see an int star, that means in a declaration, that means P is going to be a pointer variable called P. And it's going to point to some integer. OK, so the way I do this, so P is a local variable. I'm not going to do it as a rectangular box. I just want to do it in a slightly different way. I'm going to do it as a little oval kind of thing, little circular shape, just to kind of prevent me. It's a little mnemonic that to prevent me from putting a value here, because I'm not going to put a 5 or a 2 in here. That's wrong. See, a pointer can have one of 3 possible values or general values. One, it can have 0, it can have null, or it must have a valid address. So let's continue the line, and it says int star P is equal to the address of A. Where's A? I'm in main. There's no A. There's A. So P will have the address of A. So a variable that stores the address of another variable, and A happens to be an integer, by the way, hence it's an int star. That means P is going to point to A. So P stores the address. So if this is located at like some address in memory like FFCC, so then P is going to have FFCC inside it here. But I don't really know where it's going to be stored, and I'm not going to make up numbers. I'm just going to say if P holds the location of A, then P simply is pointing to A, hence the name pointer. Okay? So it's very important to represent this. That's really a major step. Okay, next line, 29. Print a number, space, a number, new line. Okay, so the first number is going to be A. Okay, well, hold on, I'm going to do some output. So I'm going to go to this side of the screen. I'm going to write output. So always show clearly your work, but at the same time exactly what the output would be on the screen. Be very clear. So the first output is A. So I'm in main, I'm looking for A. There's no A in main. Then I go to the global scope, and there's A, it's 2. So 2, followed by a space. So I'm going to use this symbol, and I can say this symbol is equal to space. Followed by, let's see, star of P. So note the use of the asterisk. The asterisk in the declaration means you're declaring a pointer variable. We just saw that on line 28. The asterisk before a variable or a pointer is called the dereferencing operator. What does dereferencing mean? So there's a reference to A. Dereference means follow the reference and get me what's there, the integer that's there. So star of P is actually an integer. See, P is an int star. It's a pointer to an integer. So if you were to follow this pointer, what do you get? The actual integer. That's why it's a %d. It's an integer. So star of P is also 2. And new line. So I'm going to do a little dot here just to remind me next time I do an output, that's where my next output is going to be. Okay, let's do the next line, line 30. It says printf %d, new line, f of a. Okay, so I guess I have to call the function f. So f is a nice function. It's always going to have, we have to maintain our call stack, the order of the calls, and that's very important. So f is a function that has a local parameter, which is a local variable called a. That's on line 8. So a is, what's the value of a? So let's go back to main. In main, I called f of a. So there's no a in main, it's 2. So f of 2 is going to be copied here. So we're ready to execute f. So inside f, I'm going to say a is equal to a plus g of a minus 1. Naturally, I have to call the function g. So g is a function that takes a parameter called b. See, that's on line 14. And b, what's the value of this parameter? So let's take a look. In f, line 10, g of a minus 1. So there's a, it's 2. 2 minus 1 is 1. So g of 1. So that parameter is going to be 1. So b happens to be 1 in this case. Okay, so g of 1. Let's go ahead and do it. Print, so line 16, %d space %d, so number space a number, new line. So the first number is b. So I'm in g, I'm looking for b, b is 1. There's an output, 1. Followed by a space, because that space is in line 16. The next number, %d, is a. So I'm in g, I'm looking for a. So there's no a in g. The rule says if you don't find it in the current scope, you go out to the global scope, it's 2. Okay, and is there a new line? I'm looking at G, line 16. Yes, there is. So I'm going to put a little dot just to remind me next time where do I put my output. Okay, very good. So we finished line 16. Now we're going to go to line 17. Line 17 is going to call H. Ooh, interesting. So H is going to sit on a stack. All right. So what's happening here? H has a parameter P. It's an int star. So it's a pointer to an integer. Okay, very good. So what is going on here? What is the value of that pointer? What is the value that I'm passing? By the way, there's always pass by value. You're always passing a copy of something. Pass by reference is nothing more than passing a copy of a memory address, which makes it a pass by reference. But in general, in C, we always pass a function. The parameter is always passed as a copy. So if that copy happens to be containing an address, we call that pass by reference. Okay, let's go back and check. So I'm in G, and I'm calling H, and H is going to have the address of B as a parameter. So there's B, and I'm passing the address of B to H. So this parameter will hold the address of B, which means if a pointer holds the address of a variable, then it points to it. So let's check quickly. P is an int star, so it's a pointer to an integer. So let's follow. Do you see an integer? Yep, that's the integer B. So that's correct. All right, so I'm in H. Let's execute H. So we're going to print %d new line A. So I'm in H, I'm looking for A. No A in here. Out you go to the global, so it's 2. Okay. And there's a new line. Don't forget that. There's a new line. Okay, what's next? Now, star of B, so the star here is a dereferencing operator. So star of B, meaning this is B, is an address. Star of B, meaning follow this address and get me that integer. So it's an integer type. Well, in this case, it's this box. It's really B in the other function, but we don't see B, we just see the space, the memory space. See, that's the power of pointers. It allows you to access space anywhere in the system, well, as long as you have the right for that space. So if this is part of my program, I have access rights to all these variables. All right, so what about it? Star of B, so this little box, is going to have the value of star of B, and I put it in brackets because of the precedence. Otherwise, it's going to be completely different things. You may want to try that. Take out the brackets and see the parentheses and see the difference. So let's try again. So star of B, which is 1 times A. You see, the asterisk between two integers is a multiplication. So star of B, 1 times A. So where's A? There's no A. Out you go. It's 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. Put that in star of B. B, star of B. So that's actually going to change this to 2. So it's going to store it at the star of P location, which is here. Return P. So that's very interesting because when I return this function, what exactly is P? Is the memory address of this location. So basically, I'm giving you back a pointer to that variable. That's kind of interesting, but you'll see what am I doing with that pointer. So that pointer is coming back to G because that's where it got called from. So I'm back in G, and then I'm going to take that pointer on line 17. Remember when I called H the address of B on line 17, so it gave me back this address. Then take that address to an integer and star of H, meaning dereference that address. So follow that address, and what do you get there? Behold, it's an integer, the integer 2. You know, I could have just said B, but nah, star of calling this function and star of H is more fun. All right. That's what I call job security sometimes. So I've got to have some sense of humor tracing these. So what is this value here? Star of H is basically that 2. So A is equal to 2. So where is A? There's no A, so you got to go back here. Well, it's already 2. Okay, good. So I don't have to change it. Okay, good. That won't do much. So what I'm going to do next is return A plus B. Okay, so B is 2, A is up here, 2. Return 2 plus 2. Ooh, I can do that one. That's 4. So where do I go back to? I go back to F. See, that's a neat to have this call stack because you can keep track where you're going. So I go back to F, and specifically, I'm looking at line 10, and line 10 is what I call G. And that G of A minus 1 turned out to be 4. So I'm in F, and I'm doing A, which is right here, A in F, is equal to A, which is 2, plus that G, which is 4. So 2 plus 4 is 6. I'm going to store this back here. Okay? So now I'm ready to go to the next line, 11. So line 11, we're going to print A. Well, there it is, A, 6, a new line. Okay. So 6, new line. Okay, good. So now we're going to go to line 12, and it says return A is 6. So we're going to get out and return 6. Where? Back to main. So I'm back in main, line 30. I just returned F of A, turned out to be 6. So what am I going to do with that? So line 30 says print %d new line F of A. So F of A is 6. So we're going to print 6 new line. So yep, there's another 6 new line. We have to extend this. All right, so I'm done with F, and I'm in main. I finished line 30. So now I'm going to start the fresh call stack, and we're going to do line 31. Line 31, we're going to call the function h. Function h. Okay, let's put function h on the stack. So just a continuation. I just cannot keep going down. I'm just going to go to the next column. So h is a function that takes a parameter called p, and this p is an int star. It's a pointer variable. So I'm going to draw it this way again, the same logic in the previous column. So what is the value of this parameter? Well, let's take a look. So in main, I said h of p. So where's p? Well, there's p. It's an address of that variable up there. And pass that address. So I'm going to pass a copy of this address into here. So this will have the address of this puppy, A. Okay, so now I got two different variables pointing to that global variable. Okay, great. So what am I doing in h at this point? So I can execute it. Let's take a look. Print a number, A, new line. So I'm in h. I'm looking for A. It's got to be the global variable, 2. So 2, new line. Okay, very good. So next line in h, star of p is equal to parentheses, star of p times A. All right, so there's p. Star of p is 2. 2 times A, where's A? A is here. So 2 times 2 is 4. Now what about it? We're going to take 4. I'm going to store it in P star of P. I'm going to put it here. That's a bit tricky, but no, really. I could have just said A is equal to A times A, but no, this is more fun because P is the address. Star of P is this box right here. It's an integer. That's all it is. Okay, so now we can return P. So what I'm returning is the address, copy of that address, to here. Okay, great. Where do I go back to? Main. Okay, let's see what main is going to do with this address. So if you look at line 31, after I called h of p and I got this address back, I'm going to use star of that. That's a dereferencing operator on the address. So in other words, take that address, give me the integer that's there, and that's 4. That's why you have a %d, n. So you're going to print that number, and that's 4, new line. Okay, so now we're going to do line 32. Oh, that's easy. Line 32 is print A. I'm in main. I'm looking for A. No A in here. Got to be the global. That's another 4. Anything else? Nope. Return 0. All done. So 0 indicates normal program termination. All my variables and my functions are terminated. And my output is 2 space 2 new line, 1 space 2 new line, 2 6 6 2 4 4. And that's what you should see if you compile this program. So you can practice by always making sure you can trace this, understand the call stack. Notice that main was first on the call stack and it's the last to exit. So that's the first one in is the last one out. That's what the stack does. And at the same time, notice how I kept the track of every local variables and its values as they change over time. Never did I once go and write on the code or scribble something on the code. So always trace what's in memory, not the code, trace the memory. The memory is what keeps track of these values over time. Watch out for the global scope, and when you look at a pointer variable, notice why I always do it in a different notation, a little circle instead of a box, so I don't accidentally put a value there. And always remember, what goes in here is like some address, some hexadecimal number that nobody really cared to know. And that number is an address of some location of some other variable. So I use this arrow to indicate that this address is really referring me to this location. So when I dereference this and I say star of p, I actually get that location, which is an integer. That makes the connection between why we declare an int star. It's a pointer variable that will hold the address that will be of an integer. And that the only way when I do star of p, that better be an integer on the other end. So you can practice this by changing some of the values in the trace. Change int a from 2 to say 4 or 3 and try it out. You can always compile the code, see the output, and compare your answer. But make sure you get a pen and a paper and try this out yourself so you can really, truly understand and appreciate how the compiler works. I hope this helps, and thank you for watching.